Let's now get into our conversation about bad threat modeling. What constitutes a bad threat model?
We've got to get to a result where either they've got assurance that they did a decent job at doing the work, or they find problems that they can fix.
What are you capturing in a threat model? What controls you have in place, and what are the strengths of those controls? That is something that needs to be captured in a threat model, and I've very rarely seen that.
Threat modeling is using models, using abstraction to think about what can go wrong, right? And a threat here is like, I'm going to beat you up if you don't give me your lunch money. It's the promise of a future bad thing if we don't do something to prevent it. When I threat model, I think about four things. What are we working on? What can go wrong? What are we going to do about it? And did we do a good job?
A spectacular question from Rick Woodward. How do you know if your threat modeling is complete? It seems like attackers get in through our blind spots.
Your threat model is never complete. You capture whatever you know about the system into your threat model. You provide as much context, as much detail. You have to get the deliverable that is effective and that is meaningful.
Can we take that deliverable and show it to people and they say, my code isn't in this thing. This diagram doesn't make any sense to me. Then it's bad. And if people look at it and they nod, we've done a good job.
This one comes from John Mumford. Have you seen threat modeling techniques elevated to your enterprise risk committee when developing your risk register?
I've seen a lot of people doing threat modeling purely from a regulatory compliance point of view. I've spoken to a lot of people when I ask them, like, hey, why are you doing threat modeling? Oh, our management has asked me to build a threat modeling process. Okay, but what is it that you want out of it? Oh, we want to be proactive.
I got a good question from Rich Mason. Where does probability of threats come from? What is the interface between threat modeling and actuarial risk management?
I believe that we spend too much time on risk. And what we really need is prioritization. And prioritization is a function of both what is the threat and what is the fix.
Stuart asks, many in security have put off threat modeling, even though they understand its benefits. Why do you believe this is happening?
I don't think we've done a good job of, kind of communicating that effectively either to the senior leadership or to the development teams.
One of the challenges is people say, I need a tool while I'm getting started. They don't start out by understanding what they're doing. Sometimes they can trip over those tools and we say, oh, this is big and complicated. No, this is simple. You can do this today. We need people to just get going and they'll learn what they're doing and they'll learn how to make it work for them.
Use a four-sided die labeled accept, mitigate, avoid, transfer. Roll the die for every choice and then execute.
We're going to do this because everyone gets focused on controls. Everyone jumps to mitigate. And what this does is it forces us to be disciplined about using different ways of addressing risk or something.
I would actually make sure that I tweak the die in a way that it rolls over, transfer all the time, so that I can go and convince my management, hey, all you need to do is buy cyber insurance.
Create threat models on an Etch-a-Sketch.
Really, the reason that an Etch-a-Sketch can be an essential tool for threat modeling is it forces people to collaborate and huddle, really get together, wearing a mask, execute on your threat modeling.
I can draw a picture of an attacker and say, hey, see, this is the bad guy here. He can come and take all your crown jewels and run away.
Organize a full-day threat modeling session with 10 people and come up with a PDF output that lands in a drawer. Why do you want to do this?
So that I can show them that I'm doing my job. I can prove that, hey, we did the exercise. I can check the box that we did a threat model for this.
At what point do business leaders realize the value of threat modeling?
There are certain leaders who've done this in the past, who knows the value of it. Then there's a second segment, which is driven by regulatory and compliance. And then there are the third ones who are like, hey, guys, go and figure it out because we got audited and threat modeling was identified as a gap.
Every company has a slightly different frame. Here at Big Medical Device Maker, In 2020, the FDA is telling us we need to do more pre-market security. The automotive industry is coming out with new standards. And so for them, it often falls in safety, as in how do we predict what's going to go wrong with our vehicles?
I'm going to go back to Rich's question. Is there a success strategy for onboard different business groups who may reject risk as they cannot relate or do not care?
So I like to start with the 4 questions, because if you can't tell me what you're working on, if you're unable to discuss what can go wrong, I can have a conversation with the CEO about that denialism.
In the past jobs, I've seen that people would be like, this does not apply to us. There's a certain level of, discussion you can have with them to see, but if they're dismissive, then I always carry a form with me. Hey, here's the risk acceptance form. Can you sign? If this doesn't apply to you, that's okay. All you have to do is sign over here and say, this doesn't apply to me.
Go and say, how can you not be doing this? Start on the path. You'll develop that maturity over time. People get really wrapped up in thinking that someone else has the answer for them. But you've got to start with, let's do the work. And you've got to involve the whole team.
Don't get hung up onto one threat model or 2 threat models. Think about what the program is going to look like as an enterprise. Don't think about completeness. Completeness will come over time. But if you're going to look to flip the switch, it's going to be very hard for you to think of this as a process across the organization.